Have you ever felt that really profound sense of just ease, you know, security with someone you really care about? That feeling where you just know you can be totally yourself, flaws and everything, and you'll still be well accepted, supported, safe. Or maybe you've had that sharp, kind of unsettling feeling, wondering if someone really has your back, if you can actually count on them when things get tough. Well, that feeling, that fundamental sense of safety and a connection, it isn't magic. It's actually the result of something real, something built, like layer by layer. And that thing is trust. So today we're taking a deep dive into the emotion of trust, what it really is, how it grows, what happens when it gets broken, and how understanding its structure can help you build and maybe even strengthen your most important relationships.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about trust, I think, is realizing it's not just some vague idea. It's built from, actual options,
No.
interaction.
Yeah.
It really is the absolute bedrock of feeling secure with another person, partner, friend, family, whoever. Without that foundation, it's just incredibly hard for real connection, real confidence to grow.
You called it the bedrock. Why is it so fundamental?
Because really, trust boils down to safety. It lets
Yeah.
partners kind of relax, feel supported, and have confidence that the relationship is stable, that it's
Yeah.
going to last. If you're constantly sort of bracing for potential hurt or inconsistency or maybe abandonment, well, you can't truly invest yourself. You can't feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And this need for safety is not something we just develop as adults either. It goes way back, deep roots in our earliest experiences.
Like really early, babyhood.
Exactly. Think about that very first stage of human development, in infancy, trust versus mistrust. It's basically the baby learning if the world, and especially their caregivers, are predictable. Are they reliable? Will they meet my needs? That foundational experience, feeling safe and cared for, or experiencing unpredictability, maybe neglect, it really shapes our capacity for trust, for intimacy, all through our lives.
Wow. So our adult ability to trust is tied to feeling safe way back then. Okay, so if that's the origin, what are the building blocks in our adult relationships? We looked at some material that breaks trust down into different types, right?
Right. There's some classic research that identified three distinct components or layers of trust,
Yeah.
and they tend to build on each other in relation
So
time.
layers, like a cake, a very important cake.
Exactly. A trust cake.
Yeah.
You can't really get to the top layers without the ones underneath holding them up. So the first, most basic layer is predictability. This is simply about how consistent someone is. Stable, self-controlled, based on how they've acted before. Do they generally act in ways you can anticipate? Do they avoid being, say, impulsive, erratic, or unexpectedly hurtful? Their behavior is expected, reliable, not full of nasty surprises.
Okay, so this is about knowing what won't happen. Like, they won't just disappear for 3 days without a word or totally lose it over something tiny. You can predict they'll be, stable.
Yeah, exactly that. It's about consistent, non-harmful behavior over time. Okay, so building on top of that is the second level, dependability. This goes beyond just predicting behavior. It's more about making a judgment about their character. Are they honest? Are they reliable in a positive way? Are they, caring? Can you actually count on them to do things? Have they consistently followed through on important stuff? Been there when you needed help?
Okay. So predictability is like avoiding the bad stuff, and dependability is more about actively doing the good stuff and being, trustworthy in what they do.
Yes, precisely. You trust they're truthful, and you trust they'll show up and support you in real, tangible ways. Then the third and the deepest level is faith. This is a big one. It's trust based on your belief about how they'll behave in the future, especially when things get uncertain or difficult or circumstances change. It's that deep assurance that they'll stay caring, stay responsive, stay committed, no matter what.
That really feels like the kind of trust you promise in, say, wedding vows, for better or worse, that kind of.
That's the core idea, yeah. It's trusting them with your deepest fears, your secrets, knowing they'll stand by you even when times are really tough, supporting your future goals, even if it means big changes for both of you. And interestingly, research consistently links this deepest level, faith, most strongly to feelings of real, genuine love.
That makes a lot of sense. You could have predictability or dependability in relationships that are just, functional. But faith seems tied to that really deep emotional commitment. So, okay, how do we actually build this multi-layered cake? It sounds like it takes real intention.
It absolutely does. Trust isn't passive. It doesn't just happen. It's an active process. It takes time, effort, and crucially, commitment from both people. We found several key practices in the material we looked at that are really central to this. Maybe instead of just listing them, we can think about how they work together, how they create that safe foundation and build up those layers.
Okay, let's build this trust house. What's the first set of tools we need?
Well, a huge part of building trust is creating a space where both partners feel safe enough to really connect. And that often starts with open communication. But it's not just about, saying what's on your mind. It's also about actively listening to your partner without judgment, really listening. It means being willing to express your own thoughts and feelings honestly, stating your needs, your boundaries clearly, but also making it safe for your partner to share theirs, without fearing criticism or being dismissed. One source mentioned that just approaching conversations with empathy can really lower the tension, especially when you disagree.
So it's less about winning the argument, more about understanding, making space for their reality, even if it's different from yours.
Exactly. And tied right into that safe space are the tools of empathy and validation. It's about genuinely trying to understand, maybe even share, your partner's feelings, showing real concern. And this is key, validating their feelings, even if you don't agree with their perspective or their version of the facts. Listening without getting defensive is huge here. Focusing on their feelings, not immediately jumping in to defend yourself or explain your intentions.
Ooh, that can be really hard, especially if you feel misunderstood yourself.
It takes conscious effort, definitely, practice. And supporting all these verbal tools is body language and nonverbal cues. Nonverbals are incredibly powerful. Sometimes they say more than our words do. Things like using steady eye contact, maybe around 4 or 5 seconds, is often good. It shows focus, openness. Subtly mirroring their posture or gestures can build rapport, making sure your tone of voice matches your words, conveying sincerity. Turning toward your partner, making eye contact, maybe a gentle touch on the arm. These small physical things that convey presence, attention, safety. They reinforce that you are there with them.
Right. So creating that safe environment through how we talk, how we listen, and even how we physically show up. Okay. What's the next set of building blocks then?
Well, once you have that kind of foundation of safety, you need to build the walls with reliability. This involves consistency and reliability in your actions. Do you follow through on what you say you'll do? Are you on time, generally? Do your actions actually line up with your words? Simple as it sounds, consistent behavior over time is just fundamental for building that first layer, predictability. If your actions are all over the place or don't match what you say, it just keeps the other person on edge.
So saying you'll pick up the dry cleaning and then actually doing it, those small things add up.
Absolutely. It's often in those consistent small actions, not just the big grand gestures, that reliability gets proven, And this goes hand in hand with transparency, being open about your thoughts, your feelings, even just your day-to-day experiences, avoiding secrets, being clear about your intentions, your actions, addressing issues directly instead of letting them fester. It shows you have nothing to hide, which builds confidence.
It sounds like being proactively honest rather than waiting for someone to maybe find something out.
Precisely. And within this reliability framework, there's also setting and respecting boundaries. Clearly communicating your own boundaries, what's okay for you, what isn't, and also being really attentive and respectful of your partner's boundaries.
Okay.
This creates a sort of defined, safe space built on mutual consideration. It says, hey, I value myself and I value you enough to define how we interact respectfully.
Okay, so we've got the safe environment as the foundation, the walls of reliability. How do we put the roof on that level of faith?
Right, that highest level of faith. It's built through really deep connection, and that requires vulnerability. Allowing yourself to be truly open, truly authentic, sharing your deeper dreams, fears, hopes, even the parts of yourself you see as imperfect. This is absolutely essential for emotional intimacy.
This feels like the riskiest step for a lot of people, doesn't it? Why is it so necessary?
Because true connection requires really seeing each other and letting yourself be seen. But vulnerability only deepens trust if it's met with safety. You have to know you won't be criticized or blamed or rejected or dismissed when you open up that inner world. That's why building that safe foundation we talk about first is so, so crucial. It's often recommended to start practicing vulnerability with people you already feel relatively safe with. Kind of build that muscle over time. And importantly, when someone is vulnerable with you, it's vital to acknowledge and thank them for it. Explicitly saying something like, thank you for sharing that with me. I really appreciate you trusting me enough to be vulnerable. This encourages them to be open again in the future.
Wow, that simple act of just acknowledging the gift of their vulnerability, that seems really powerful.
It really is. It reinforces that their risk was okay. It was met with acceptance, not rejection. And the final key piece, the one that really reinforces faith, is emphasizing commitment. Reassuring your partner through both words and actions that you are in it together, avoiding what's sometimes called exit language, threats of breaking up, divorce, or even just emotionally withdrawing. That stuff can trigger deep fears of abandonment. Using we statements, talking about shared hopes for the future, reinforcing that sense of partnership, that you're a team.
Okay, so that's the structure. Safety foundation, reliability walls, faith roof, built with all those tools. But what happens when that structure gets damaged or even collapses? Because trust can be broken, sometimes in really big ways.
Oh, absolutely it can. And the impact is profound. We looked at material discussing serious breaches like infidelity, which was defined essentially as breaking trust by keeping significant intimate secrets.
Right, and rebuilding after something like that requires something that was described as rigorous honesty. Sounds intense.
It sounds intense because it is intense. It means essentially fearlessly telling the truth about everything related to the breach and doing it proactively, faster than waiting to be asked. It means not holding back details, not trying to minimize the impact it had on your partner, and accepting responsibility without getting defensive.
So it's not just like confessing when you get caught. It's actively laying out the full truth, even the really difficult parts.
Precisely. It's incredibly painful for everyone involved, no doubt. But it's presented as necessary for any chance of true healing. We saw some common pitfalls people fall into when they try to be rigorously honest, things like passively waiting for the hurt partner to ask just the right questions, or offering only partial truths, or acting like a child being interrogated instead of an adult taking responsibility, minimizing the partner's pain, getting defensive, maybe even attacking back when faced with their reaction. Those actions, they aren't rigorous honesty. They're still forms of hiding or blaming that actually block repair. True transparency, like maybe offering voluntary access to calendars or phones for a time, while definitely not the whole answer, can sometimes be a tool to help speed up rebuilding, but it always takes consistent effort over a significant amount of time.
Wow, that really underscores how challenging, how multifaceted rebuilding trust is. It's definitely not a quick fix.
Not at all. And another major challenge to trust, one that often actually predates the current relationship, stems from past trauma.
Right. How does someone's history of trauma affect their ability to trust now in the present?
Well, trauma, whether it's from childhood neglect, abuse, betrayal, maybe toxic past relationships, it fundamentally changes how a person's brain and body approach safety and connection. It makes trust feel inherently risky because their system basically learned that being vulnerable or depending on someone led to pain. So the brain develops survival mechanisms.
Survival mechanisms that might actually get in the way of healthy relationships now.
Exactly. And it's important to frame these not as personal failures, but as protective responses learned in unsafe situations. But yeah, they can manifest as things like a deep fear of abandonment, causing someone maybe to overanalyze every little action or need constant reassurance, or hypervigilance, being constantly on high alert for any sign of betrayal or rejection, or difficulty being vulnerable, shutting down, avoiding deep conversations because opening up felt dangerous in the past. Even self-sabotage, like pushing people away first to control the hurt they expect is coming, or significant struggles with forgiveness, finding it incredibly hard to believe others won't hurt them again.
That sounds incredibly difficult for both the person with the trauma history and their partner trying to build trust with them.
It really is. And while these mechanisms protected them back then, they can unfortunately block the possibility of feeling safe and secure in a healthy relationship now. So rebuilding trust when past trauma is involved, it's a really delicate process. It involves recognizing those triggers, understanding that maybe a partner's action is hitting a past wound, not necessarily indicating a present danger. It requires open communication about those fears and needs, consciously challenging those ingrained negative thoughts, taking very small, manageable steps towards trusting again, practicing immense self-compassion. And often, professional help is really beneficial.
Yeah. Therapy can provide that safe space, right, to process the past wounds, identify those triggers and protective responses, and work through them to find healthier ways to relate now.
Absolutely. For individuals and for couples, too, it can be a critical resource in navigating these really complex dynamics.
Okay, so stepping back a bit, now that we've explored the building and the potential breaking of trust, how do these different levels, predictability, dependability, and faith, how do they tie into our deeper relationship goals?
Well, the research suggests that while predictability and dependability are really valuable for just relationship stability, maybe achieving external goals together, it's that highest level, faith, that's most strongly connected to actually feeling loved and achieving those internal emotional goals, sharing your deepest self, feeling completely accepted, that kind of thing.
So faith is where the really deep intimacy lives.
It seems like it. Yes. It's also worth mentioning there's an interesting balance needed. While consistency builds predictability and trust, a relationship that's too predictable, like completely lacking any spontaneity or surprise, could potentially decrease attraction for some couples over time. So finding that dynamic balance is part of the art of it all. But ultimately, building emotional intimacy through trust and vulnerability, it isn't just about feelings. It also significantly impacts physical intimacy. And if we go back to Erickson for a second, that major task of young adulthood, intimacy versus isolation, forming those close, committed relationships really relies heavily on having a strong enough sense of self and, crucially, the capacity for trust to build those bonds in the first place.
Okay, so what does this all boil down to then?
Trust isn't some, finish line you cross and you're done. It's dynamic. It's a living process. It's like building a sturdy, layered structure, predictability, dependability, and faith, and you use specific conscious tools to do it.
Tools like really listening, showing up consistently, being transparent, validating feelings, daring to be vulnerable sometimes, respecting boundaries, and reinforcing your commitment.
Exactly. And when that structure gets damaged, whether it's by a specific betrayal that needs that rigorous honesty and accountability, or maybe by the echoes of past trauma that need compassion and careful, slow repair, understanding these components gives you a kind of blueprint. It's not a magic fix, obviously, but it gives you the knowledge, the tools to actively engage in the process of strengthening your most vital connections.
And that is our deep dive into the emotion of trust. So for you listening right now, maybe think about one significant relationship in your life. What is one small, consistent action you could take this week, maybe even today, that would demonstrate predictability, showcase dependability, or express faith in that connection?
Start small. Consistent effort. That's the real builder of trust, layer by layer.